and welcome everyone to this fascinating panel today, which will be discussing the future landscape of sports betting. I'm Simon Westbury, Head of Sales at Digitain, and I'll be moderating the panel. But going quickly on to the esteemed panelists that will be joining me, we are joined by Minya Balinskov, the CEO of MaxBet, Alexis Murphy, the CEO of BetFirst, Giovanni Garisi, the CEO of StanleyBet, and recently, recent inductee into the Sport SBC Hall of Fame. And then also, last but by no means least, Paris Smith, CEO of Pinnacle, who is a long-standing member of the SBC Hall of Fame, a friend of SBC and a friend of the industry. And thank you for getting up very early at Paris on the other side of the pond to join us.
My pleasure.
Obviously, with such an esteemed panel and such a broad scope, I think there's many things that we could discuss. But I think I've discussed with all the panelists trying to limit the word, the C word, as much as we can. And by that, I mean COVID. I think we're all aware of what we've gone through with COVID. But what we should maybe remember at this point is there has been a new reality from COVID. So maybe as a start of the panel, I can come to you, Minya, as your head is the biggest on all the cameras in front of me right now, to explain, and if you could, a little bit about your organization as well, because, you know, being a bit of a heathen, I wasn't aware of the operations, over 3,000 staff that you employ. So a brief introduction about what you do in your area of the world, and also what your new reality looks like to kick us off.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I'd like to congratulate Giovanni on joining the Hall of Fame. Well-deserved. Congratulations. Paris is there as well. Greetings to everybody. My name is Minya Bolesnikov. I'm a CEO of MaxBet. MaxBet is a group of companies operating in 4 different markets: Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and North Macedonia. We are an omni-channel provider, meaning that we own over 450 shops in those 4 markets, Serbia being by far the biggest one. We also onboarded some 200,000 active online users. We do big HoReCa activity throughout the region. And all in all, we're trying to diversify all the revenue streams through betting online, land-based, pre-match, VLTs, slot machines, online casino, virtuals, esports, etc., etc., etc. And the reality, when the C thing hit, was really tough. We closed down all of the shops, but then pledged publicly that we are not gonna let go of any staff members, due to the fact that we are fighting staff turnover big time for a number of years so far. And as you said, we can go on and cry about how things are different, but no, this is the new now. And I think that there are some wonderful challenges ahead of us, but also that the landscape of the entire business industry is going to look very much different in time to come.
Thank you for the overview, Minya, and also some initial thoughts. I mean, if I come to Giovanni, who I know has always got an opinion on things, I know you wrote an algorithm before the COVID hit. I suppose my first question to Giovanni, was your algorithm right, and what does your reality look like at StanleyBet?
But what can I do? COVID was not, of course, something that we have chosen. And so when there is a problem, you are looking immediately for the opportunity behind, because otherwise... So I've seen this period like the opportunity to not to stop, but to improve our activities. So I have basically renounced to all the help of the British authorities, and all the technicians in Liverpool have continued to work, renouncing to the furloughed facilities of the government, continues to work in all our departments, mainly virtual, robotic department, etc. And so what I found out at the end, that we have improved a lot, and we have used the problem to arrive to the opportunity to do better. And we have done better because the way in which we have recovered is unbelievable. But I think that apart COVID, what is important is that this world, this industry, is guilty and is increasingly affected by the fact that the regulators are increasingly regulating. The industry is not united. So, I mean, a media industry, betting industry, and sports, or mainly football industry, didn't become allied to face the complex of the regulator becoming increasingly hostile after the people looking at betting and gaming in increasing hostile. We can come back after on this part of the matter eventually. Yeah.
No, of course. I think regulation is something we're going to talk about. I know Paris and Minya and Alexis have given me some great insight, and I think you're trying to take my job here, Giovanni, and moderating this panel. So I'm going to get it back on track and maybe just come to Paris and get some thoughts on you on how your new reality is. And I know when we spoke yesterday, you talked about some simulations that you did and some actual benefits that you've seen about hiring staff, etc. So not for me to speak for you, Paris. Please tell us a bit about your reality.
You know, we have 6 offices around the world. And I think, you know, what we realized is, and our goal was, of course, to save the staff, but to come out of this stronger. And by doing so, you know, we had to communicate a lot more. One thing with this whole concept of work from home, which, you know, to be fair, the staff were quite phenomenal. I'm sure all of you have the same situation where people were so dedicated and, you know, so committed to just getting through this together. But, you know, even I think from a hiring perspective, which is something we focus on very keenly, you know, instead of saying, oh, do you want to come to one of my 6 offices and relocate your life? You don't have those issues anymore. You know, people do have more freedom to work remotely. And it is about getting the right person in order to drive your business forward. And I think, you know, that's one reality that we've had, as well as retention of current staff. You know, there's a lot of reasons why people have to leave, or, you know, family, professional, whatever it might be, kids going to colleges or schools, whatever. And, you know, I think now a lot of the companies that did not have that flexibility, you know, now they do. But I'd given you the example yesterday, when you have so many different languages that you have to support, you know, it's kind of hard to find Japanese speaker in Malta, Curacao, and even Manila. And, you know, now we're not confined to those areas. But what's more interesting is how we felt confined. Instead of serving the customer, we were more concerned about getting somebody in the right spot, you know. So for me, that's been one of the biggest takeaways.
Okay, thank you, Paris. Alexis, coming to you, and I think if we can maybe talk about your reality, and also when I spoke to you yesterday, you had some great insight about regulation and maybe about industry perception. So as we move through pretty seamlessly following Giovanni's lovely teeing up of this topic, maybe I can come to you to talk about the reality and the perception and the regulation side as your thoughts, because there was some very interesting stuff you said to me about the regulator in Belgium and some of the things that are happening to you.
Yes, I certainly. I'm just going to start by specifically not obeying your instructions. If I can add 1 or 2 comments on the current crisis. I mean, I completely agree with Giovanni. You know, as the old saying goes, you can't let a good crisis go to waste. And I think there's been tremendous learnings, certainly for us and the industry. I think actually, if anything, as we've seen how things have bounce back for most, if not all, participants in the industry. It's shown the resilience of the sector relative to other sectors, and I think that's a net positive for the sector. Obviously, in terms of other issues for us, it catapulted omni-channel even further forward. When people weren't allowed to bet in the shops, they could still, in retail, load up their accounts through news agents, and they did that. So, further precipitated the push online. And then the other obvious one, which is sort of well documented, but was the sort of push towards alternative sports, whether it's esports being the big one, both in online and retail, but other sports which came to the fore, whether it's Belarusian football or indeed sports like table tennis, which picked up certainly for us a good following. And interestingly, even with deconfinement and mainstream sports picking back up again, we've seen that those lines of businesses have held up well and are well above pre-crisis levels. So that's, my little parenthesis on the current state of play. I think, clearly, if we look towards the future, and it's obviously influenced by the current crisis, regulation it has been the dominant issue in our industry for a long time, and remains so. I guess for me, the big question will be, the interplay between further regulation and tax revenues, because I think if there's one undeniable reality, however we get out of this crisis, governments are going to have less money in the bank, and even though they have the ability to print a lot, that's probably not going to suffice. So I think our sector tends to be one of the first that they come after, and I suspect we will probably internationally anyway see more of that. And I think ultimately governments will need to counterbalance their ability to get tax revenues from the sector with the manner in which they regulate the sector, because as I'm sure my colleagues will agree, over-regulation will ultimately drive business offshore and diminish the potential tax take for the government. So I think there'll be an interesting tension there in the future. Just very briefly, speaking of Belgium, unfortunately, we've already seen the effects of it in the last few months, with certain measures that were put in place by the government, specifically around deposit limits, which has seen VIP customers go abroad to non-regulated .com sites, and equally bonuses have been banned completely in Belgium. And again, that's just led to a resurgence of offshore business. It's been very visible to us in terms of digital advertising and presence of offshore operators, unregulated operators. So I think that's a reality. It's obviously up to the sector to try and articulate that to governments.
Okay, maybe Paris, coming to you next. I mean, I know when we spoke, you talked about bonusing, and actually the fact you guys don't bonus and it's kind of lazy. So maybe you should get into Belgium, Paris, and there's your market for you. I mean, well, what's your kind of view on regulation, and what's Pinnacle's view as well? Because I know you also spoke about growth of the Pinnacle solutions and the B2B arm.
Yeah, I think, from the regulatory perspective, Giovanni made an amazing point where the industry has to start working closer together. We all have the same problem. And if we all sit and complain about it individually, we're not going to get the power, if you will, to present ourselves as an industry to a regulator. And, the regulators, they seem to be, instead of, they're dictating rather than regulating. And in reality, it's set up to, earn money off the taxation and also protect the players. But now it feels like direct attacks to the players, to the operators, and that's there's obviously a flaw there. But I feel like, if we, again, to Giovanni's point, if we can work together, that would be much better. As far as protecting the player, I think that's where the regulator is coming from the bonusing perspective. You don't want to give, false leads and, false expectations on bonusing. It's a strong encouragement during a period of crisis, which is why they're looking at bonusing more than ever now. But it would be nice if there was a world where people had a level playing field and, you had to produce the product, the quality of the product, the depth of the product. And, you didn't have to go up against somebody with 180% sign up bonus.
No, I understand. And I think actually what we're talking about here is, Alexis mentioned it to me yesterday. Some operators, if we're honest as an industry, talk about player protection, talk about regulation, but they pay some lip service to it. And I don't think we need to mention any names here, but as an industry, we're aware of it. But I think actually this runs into a bigger problem, which is a perception problem. And I always say when I was young, years ago, back in 2007, and I first got involved in the industry, I used to enjoy going to a wedding because the bridesmaids were always interested in me involved in gaming. But now you mention gaming to someone, it's like you're peddling drugs, or you're kind of in a black market that's even worse than alcohol or cigarettes. So coming to you, Giovanni, who's very strong on regulation, has actually won a number of court judgments on regulation. What's your view on the regulation, these issues of player protection, but also changing the perception of the industry? Because I think Paris makes a very good point. We're being dictated to in more draconian terms than maybe alcohol and cigarettes.
But, we are living in a world in which, yes, perception are important, but I would use, because everything born from also political situation around, where perception is not the first word to use, but suggestion could be the one, if we think to the populism, etc. So, and this is important. Why? Because every political guy, every politician, have tried to take advantage to become hostile to gaming, to gain the approval of part of the population. Okay, so for example, this happened in Italy, and I know it's happening now in Spain. In Italy, we have had the ban of every possible advertising for online, and so suggestion that we are in danger because of gaming and betting and slots, etc. So now, colleagues, what has been missing? The alliance between the various components, as I said before, the alliance between the various components to try to face this event. So, for example, the industry of sports or of football is hugely power, is one of the strong power with which also governments have to deal, but they accepted to remain alone. The media, the same. The media have exaggerated to present in a sequence, continuous, even 6-7 spots every hour regarding gaming, and so. What has been missed is the auto-regulation, and in some jurisdiction there are instruments. There are instruments for that allow an operator to say to a media, listen, I will want to have a politics that is for which I am banning myself from certain period of the day. And in a nutshell, if we want to think better for the future, and to wish that something will change on this, we need to find out the alliance between the various components, not to contrast regulations or regulators, but in such a way that, sorry, it's a question of brain, not anymore of suggestion or perception. Okay, because nobody want, if you think, for example, there are various parts in Europe and also in Italy where the organized crime has taken opportunity to enter. I know very well the Italian situation where the Tribunal of South have operated getting rid of a strong organization connected to mafia. For example, to the 'Ndrangheta in Calabria. The prosecutor of Reggio Calabria has been a fantastic operation. The same in Palermo, Bari, etc. So all the south of Italy has been found guilty of taking opportunities for what? Lack of regulation? No, lack of understanding of the situation. And this brings to the problem of how much competent the regulator are. But on that, I can see that also the regulator are becoming increasingly incompetent to face their job.
Thank you, Giovanni. Go on, Paris.
Sorry, I actually think that I think if you're, where the regulators have tried to dictate, not regulate, that is where the perception changes because of the media. I think the biggest answer to that is educating them. And again, we could do that more collectively than doing it ourselves. But with the US coming in, that has changed the perception of gaming. It's made it so much more acceptable. And I think, I'm hoping that the US looks at it, I think New Jersey has just done a phenomenal job of regulating the industry, working with the industry, and I hope that they lay the foundation for the rest of the states. And, of course, it's gaming. People get too greedy. Like they think we make gazillions amounts of billions of dollars and everybody wants a piece of that. And that goes from data to providers, all different things. There's so many pieces in the food chain. But, I actually feel like the perception has become more positive. But if I was sitting in the UK, I would agree 100% with you, Simon. But I feel like globally it is shifting in a more positive way, other than in those specific jurisdictions where the media has put forward, more of a negative perception.
That's an interesting point, and I think actually we'll talk a bit about the States in a bit, and obviously it's always good to hear from different perspectives. So maybe Minya, coming to you and your perspective of what's going on in the Balkans, how regulations look for you, what do you think the future will look like? You mentioned a number of countries that you're working in.
Awesome comments by my colleagues, by Paris and Giovanni. And I think Giovanni has a very, very, very good point. Lack of advocacy, lack of us being together and talking to the public and to governments, to regulators, to media about what we do and how we do. And I think lack of word of entertainment is also somewhere missing in this puzzle, due to the fact that, as Paris rightly put, people think we are making all the millions there are. And that I even had a funny situation when I was asked, what do you mean all the pains are not your margin? What are you talking about? So to come back to that, capital will move. Capital will search for a more pleasant environment. It will search for a more profitable one. It does need regulation. It does not want to be over-regulated because then it's prevented to grow, to multiply, etc., etc. That's where we come into, CIS or Balkans, where we've seen good regulators doing good jobs in terms of copying what's there to be copied from Western laws, from matured markets. but still allowing companies to grow, work. After COVID, we've opened another 50 shops. And I mean, you don't do that if you don't feel confident in what you do in the region. And on the other hand, you know, I'm in contact with most of the people. We've been approached by many, hey, what are your plans? What do you think if we partner up, if we entered, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, capital is looking for its way. On the other hand, as my colleagues have put it, if we did not use this lovely crisis to grow, to change, to improve, then we've missed our chances. On the other hand, finally, I want to debate, and I would like to hear thoughts of others. Gaming as a word is now comprising several different subcategories of an industry. And I'm talking our kids playing Fortnite or a local chap playing an online casino. So just to make clear who's in right and who's in wrong. When you're playing Fortnite, all you can do is spend your money on upgrading your account, on buying different gadgets without any chance to win anything. So, and the amounts being spent there are huge. And why is that more accepted or more acceptable than going to a betting parlor or using your app, where actually you can put in some time, some thought, and actually even try to win something? So
I mean, maybe if I can just answer that. That's a fantastic point you just made. And I think if I just add on that before we roll that out to the panelists, I remember, and I'm sure you've all been in the industry long enough to remember when social gaming was going to be this great big, new thing, and it was going to be Farmville. Very good friend of mine, Roger Withers, chairman of Playtech at the time, said, Simon, the problem with this is, until it's regulated, how's anyone going to make any money on this? You can have a slot at 110%. RNG, RTP. So come on, let's look at this sensibly. But I think that's a great point that we're making, and it's talking about products and product mix. But these cards, there's no regulation on it on FIFA. I mean, maybe I'm being a bit sexist talking about football, but that's a whole new world we're going to go into. I mean, Paris, if I come to you, maybe.
I'm sorry, I just want to point out one more thing. We're talking about esports. We, for example, are failing it wonderfully, meaning that as soon as sports came back, although they came in completely different format, you all follow football, Paris soccer for you. What came back was not the same game that we had before, and outcomes and the whole statistics. And I don't really think that our bookie teams, odds teams, and risk teams were ready for that. So a lot to learn on top of that. On the other hand, education of our clients and our users towards esports is something that's going to really take a while. But in my point of view, it must never be stopped due to the fact that we don't know if COVID is going to hit again. What's going to happen if sports stop again? What, we're then going to be those lazy guys who are going to say, okay, I'm going to go digital now and try to onboard people. No, you have to do it now. So, sorry, that's all I want.
Sorry, man, it's a great point that you make. Going to Paris, I mean, I'm interested in your view on esports. I remember you've been a supporter at Pinnacle of esports probably before anyone else was talking about it. I know Raz, you've won many of Raz's awards. I mean, to understand maybe the 2 points being made, how's esports held up? I know it was big for you before COVID. And also there's another great point Minya's made, and I discussed it with a ex-professional footballer friend of mine, how interesting the players that couldn't hit a barn door and score a goal in soccer from 5 yards out with a crowd there have reacted differently to the crowd. How's that affected your bookmaking and your sport book with the return of sport? So maybe start with esports, and we'll have the other question in the background.
Okay. With esports, again, we took advantage of the opportunity and really looked at our product. We have a lot of traders, obviously, and everybody put their eyes on esports. And we got a stronger product, more depth in our product. The guys did a phenomenal job making it a better a better option for everybody. And then, of course, that trickles over to Pinnacle Solution, which is fantastic. But I think, that concept of getting people educated to esports, we did see the biggest crossover we've ever seen, but it is a very unique player. And again, that's where people trip and stumble, because you have to go directly to those players. There are so many interested parties in esports, much more than in football, by the numbers of the international championships that they have. They have a bigger viewership than the Super Bowl or any one of the soccer matches. So I think, from that regard, the esports has been phenomenal for us. We've seen a huge pickup on Pinnacle Solutions, so that's been great. But again, taking the opportunity to make it a better product, a stronger product. There's a lot of competition coming in right now on esports, so it was a good opportunity for us to get it put in the forefront again. And sorry, then the second part was about the football.
The impact of not having an audience in the sport. I mean, maybe if I put it for you, throwing that touchdown pass in an empty stadium may have a different impact to throwing it in front of the Super Bowl audience. Has that affected your sportsbook and your odds or your trading?
Well, there's definitely some, with the flow of the games and things like that. Our modelers and AI and all the groups, the R&D groups, they've worked really hard to just kind of make sure that that what the numbers that they're trading now are aligned with that change. But the interest in itself, because there was nothing, now, I think everybody's seeing numbers post pre-COVID are getting stronger than, they're stronger now than pre-COVID, which is fantastic. And it's really just about that interest. People want to see something. They want to be part of something, like they truly, truly miss the sporting events. It's such a huge part of our lives. And again, I think that could potentially tie back to the perception and the positive perception. But we have to work together to get that out there.
Alexis, coming to you. I know we discussed esports, and I had a very funny image of, I don't know why, and it's nothing against you, of like esports in a shop in Belgium and seeing, what my image of someone in a betting shop in Belgium. I mean, how's the product mix look for you? How's esports and virtuals? I mean, virtuals and esports have been around, and I think it's lazy of us to say that COVID allowed those industries to be born, because they were there. They managed to grow through that. But how's it look for you, Alexis? Has esports maintained its market share with sport coming back?
No, it's grown significantly, and I think for me, esports sort of epitomizes a lot of the issues in terms of coming back to the kind of perception of the industry. I think Paris rightly said, with the likes of the US. Essentially adopting sports betting, the cultural perception, potentially a positive perception or acceptance, at least, of betting and gaming. That was moving forward. But I think beyond the cultural, there's a generational thing, and it's very tangible. Interestingly, both here in Belgium and in places like France, relative to countries like Ireland, where I come from. In Ireland, everyone's been racing and had a bet on the horses at least once in their life. Betting is just part of the DNA. In France, before betting was regulated, that absolutely wasn't the case, and Belgium either. And I think you've got an issue that the legislators, the regulators, belong to that previous generation for which betting was anathema. And I think the new generations, for them, it's an accepted leisure activity. And at some point, those generations are going to become the regulators and the legislators of the future. So I'd be kind of positive in terms of that. And I think also, in terms of that generational shift, that same generation, they're all completely hooked into esports and gaming, and all of it converges quite a bit. I mean, just recently, my son was mentioning to me he's on a social gaming network, and I can't remember if it was Fortnite, but they've got sort of virtual tokens that they can exchange amongst each other. But amongst themselves, they're having bets on the football, and depending on the outcome of that bet, they would exchange, virtual credits of a gaming platform. And I just thought that was, very interesting. And by definition, that's going to be something that's hugely difficult to regulate. But it's a reality of the environment, of the innovation, the way young people are thinking today. So I think, in terms of the future, the future of the industry, I'd be very positive in terms of the demographics and the shifts. I think we're going to have a world of complexity, and we're already seeing it with esports in terms of regulation. But unfortunately, regulators, governments, operators are going to have to get their heads around it, because it's not going to disappear.
No, that's great, and interesting about your son, actually, because kids always find a way, don't they? Giovanni, I mean, what's your view on the product mix? And obviously, again, I know you're very good with your stats. How's your sportsbook looked? Have you had to make changes with the return of your odds and with the return of the traditional live sports?
Okay, basically, I can say that having worked a lot on the product, the technologies, etc., I am very satisfied of our mix specifically. I can say that I'm not too much in favor. I have seen that everybody are enthusiastic of esports. This is a sign of the time, because if you think that we have a problem with the regulators, we are now considering that one of the most important things for the future are esports. So basically, video games. It's clear that obvious that if the industry is not able to find out nothing more, but just trying to do this kind of thing, because don't forget, video games are played mainly by minors, and we are now taking bet on this kind of situation. Obviously, not between challenges between minors, obviously, but at the end we are in this framework. So I found crazy. And so, as I said before, we are guilty, because as an industry altogether, we have not been able to find out, let's say, a wealthy way for the future. We are now everybody interested and enthusiastic of esports. I'm not, and in fact, esports, yes, we offer esports, but it's minimum amount. But just because I cannot be vigilant every day, because it was for me, I would not introduce esports for the moment. At the end, I can appreciate that this will be the future. I understand that. And obviously, we will need to take, because at the end, I am in this moment critic, but I have to recognize that the best of our revenue are coming now from virtual. What is virtual at the end? False players playing between them, and we bet on this. Okay, with the help of random generator. Yes, this is true. But at the end, we are very far from the genuine offer of sports, where really is a game of chance. And but it is a sign of the time, because we see now that esports are candidate to become Olympic Games. You know that. Olympic Games. Okay, sorry to be very, if you want, against the river going.
You can be the grumpy old man of the panel, Giovanni, accepting the future but fighting against it. How does that sound?
No, but you know, if there is a horse, there was Ben-Hur, the famous movie. If there is a horse trying to delay a little, we can have perhaps a more sensible approach that will not force regulator and governments to regulate against the sector. We need to consider that we need to find the right trade-off between free of our wishes and expression and the real need of the players.
No, I think I think. Go on, Alexis. I think everything you said is right.
I think the issue with esports is that there's just such a seismic shift between different generations. You know, to say that people who play esports are minors, unfortunately, is wrong. There are plenty of minors. There are also plenty of minors who play football, and thankfully, you know, that's how people pick up the activity. But you know, today,
but that is not a game of chance. Football is not a game of chance. Yeah,
no, it's a game of skill, as are esports, and certainly much more than virtuals. And I think, you know, if you look at the demographics, the 20 to 40-year-old generation, they're absolutely crazy on esports. And you know, that's where a lot of the business drivers are. It's that generation for whom who grew up with it, and for whom it's a big part of their leisure activities. So I think, you know, whether obviously people are sitting in their sitting rooms, they're not running around and so on. But I think whether you have a view on that or not, it's kind of irrelevant. I think ultimately it's a leisure activity where there's competition, where there's skill, and where there's a huge audience. And I think the generation of gamers, the 20 to 40-year-olds, they're going to continue gaming until their 60s, 70s, 80s. They'll probably live to be 100, you know. So and they'll keep on gaming. So I think for me, it's absolutely here to stay. Although I agree with you, you know, the nature of esports is such that there's going to be significant challenges in terms of regulating it.
Yeah, and I think sorry, Simon. I think I agree that the destiny is inevitable. That this kind of gaming will be successful in the future. Betting a game will be very successful in the future. Is inevitable. So this is even more important. Make even more important to be aware of the way in which we face this with the regulators. I say we because I would like that there is really a conjunction of intent within the industry, but more than within the industry, because we have already the association of bookmakers, even in Belgium, for example. But at the end, what is important, in my opinion, is the allied of the three key industry: media, sports, and betting. Because we need to present to the regulators a strong opinion and a competent opinion on what has to be regulated. And take, for example, the example, but it's just an example of Lottomatica in Italy. They participate to rebuild a monument, taking money from the revenue in Lotto, for Lotto. And the same apply, I believe, to Superenalotto, that is the other one, very, very famous in Italy. So, and I think there are other examples in Europe. So we need to become proactive. We need to be united and proactive, not separated and reactive. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. I'm just a little bit conscious of time now. Obviously, as we have 4 heavyweights, we always have to be a little bit careful. But I think you mentioned a good point there, proactivity, Giovanni. So I'm going to just drill into that a little bit in terms of expansion. Future, I think, there's an opportunity to grow, be that in emerging markets. And I know Minya's got some points to make on that, or if it's, online and how we can grow online. So conscious of time, and I hate to say that, but it's part of my job, but we've had a good panel so far. In terms of proactivity in the future, Minya, coming to you, is there growth for you with your omni-channel online and offline in the regions you operate? Is it emerging markets? And Paris, when I come to you, I think, not picking on your accent, some insight on the US would be good. You've touched on it already. I'm not sure I can call the US an emerging market, but it's a newly regulated market. Let's go that way. So if I come to Minya first on this, and then I'll come to you, Paris, if that's okay.
Well, thank you. I can give you an educated answer that there's Latin America, there's US, and obviously there's CIS and Balkans. But generally, we do feel that people are looking into what we do, how we do things, etc., etc. Don't forget that Serbia and the countries in the region of Southeast Europe have marked within the DNA of our customers that it's okay to bet, that betting parlors are more of a lovely bars or coffee shops or even restaurants rather than a shady place where you just come in to put in some money. So we've tried to diversify, but we've sold 2 million beers alone in Serbia last year throughout our parlors, 2.2 million espressos. So obviously, this being a supportive activity, it became a very important revenue stream for us. And Alexis made a good point, and this is what COVID gave us as a takeaway. We said, okay, Serbia is not big on credit cards. The region's not big on that due to the fact that people are still uneducated, not believing, are worried who's going to monitor their activity, etc., etc. So we went to all potential top-up places which were never even thought of. So we've partnered up with the biggest gas and petrol chain. We've partnered up with newsstands throughout Serbia. So we've, besides our own 400 plus outlets, we are giving a chance to our customers to pay in their deposits at 4,500 different places besides MaxBet's own channel. On the other hand, we realized, okay, we are going to produce our own content for the online. Online in the region is still pretty much in favor of the betting, especially live like everywhere else. Serbia offers 425 markets per single match versus, 260 in Western Europe. So people are looking for new ways to play. I think we are boring as an industry. I think we need to be more proactive. And if we know that, for example, this esports player is the world's most paid sports person, then although I'm not in favor of it, it's going to come. And somehow we did not catch the wave of them being able to advocate that it's okay to be an esports player, that it's okay to play esports, although people are spending huge amounts of money, and they're going to go to the Olympics. We need to catch that wave. We need to be part of that train as well. And finally, innovate. If you have a good product, if you have an awesome marketing, it's all going to go to waste if, for example, you have a horrible process of registration of your player, if you're not there to support him, etc., etc., etc. So looking into those side or back office services, it's as important as the offer itself, because we are not going to be dumping each other anymore with margins because there's nothing left.
Minyo, I think you could go. I need to get you a speaking platform, and you need to, evangelize about this, because you've touched on everything that's so true. And I think actually we've managed to get through 49 minutes of a panel without talking about innovation. The only reason is because I find innovation a bit of a bugbear, because people, confuse it with invention. But where you've talked about registration, those very simple things that people sometimes forget about, I think you made a great point. Coming to Paris and Pinnacle, which is a company which could never be said has not been at the forefront of innovation, and I'm not just saying that because I like Paris, I think it's true. But obviously, without the ability to sell the espressos or the beer that Minyo has in his retail outlets, how does the future look for you? And I think, touching on a point Minyo made earlier about entertainment, we are an entertainment industry, so maybe I can just ask you to expand on the future for Pinnacle in that way.
Well, I think, Pinnacle's watching very carefully, and, it's very entertaining seeing what's happening. I think that the most emerging market right now is the newest market, which is the US. There's been some inspirational valuation, the things that DraftKings have done is just phenomenal. But the reality is it's gaming, and it's all going to come back down to basics eventually. And I think product, price, partnerships, those are all going to be critical on who is getting, who's going to be the next big player if somebody can dethrone who's at the top currently. But, there's so much success there. There's so much opportunity. It's complicated, absolutely. But, looking at the numbers, I'm always pleasantly surprised when I look at the numbers coming through when Colorado opens up or whatever new state opens up. It's really, it's really exciting for Pinnacle to watch and see. And, you never know what's going to happen, but we're just, again, observing. And there's a lot of, really amazing players that are laying an amazing foundation for the U.S. to really take off.
Just coming to Alexis and Giovanni, I think, with the future and what's happening, I think we've seen with the evolution and M&A activity. Personally, I think M&A is going to become more and more important. Alexis, have you got any views, or any other panelists? I'll throw it open to you all. You can all fight amongst yourself, and I'll step out of the way. Anyone got any views on M&A and what we may see in terms of that? I mean, obviously, you've mentioned the state, Paris, and some of the stuff we've seen there already.
Yeah, I mean,
you said first of all, Alexis. So, yeah, Alexis. Yeah.
Go ahead, Giovanni.
No. He said Alexis. Go. I have something to say, but he said Alexis. So you go. You go first.
Undeniably, M&A is going to continue. That there's a huge amount of very deep-pocketed, publicly quoted companies, a lot of private equity interest, and with what's going on in the economy, that there's even more of an incentive for people to invest, to leverage up, and so on. So I think, if anything, I'm actually surprised that M&A activity has been relatively slow over the last 12 to 18 months, putting aside a few mega deals. I think the US is going to be a tremendous catalyst there. You see the kind of discrepancy between European and US valuations. I think we're going to see a kind of convergence there. No, I think I imagine there are plenty of investment bankers who are being kept quite busy on various deals, and also I think to come back to regulation, with increased regulation, you need scale, and you need to be able to deal with the various complexities of operating in our industries. So, I certainly think we're going to see an awful lot of M&A over the next 12, 24 months.
Giovanni?
Yeah, okay. Alexis basically has covered the matter well, and so I want just to add that this question of USA entering in the arena will be the difference, because obviously when we speak about $500 million, they speak about 5 billion. So everything is bigger, and And the fact, every time there is a problem, there are companies that became stronger, companies that became weaker. So inevitable, we will see in all Europe a lot of changes in the direction of consolidation, no doubt. I think that as soon as the United States became aware of little different way to do the business in Europe, there will be a mix with a lot of energy, meaning money available for the industry. So I don't think I have nothing more to add about what Alexis said.
Paris, Minya, either of you got any views on the M&A and what may be happening? I know obviously, Paris, you know a lot about the US and you touched on it briefly before.
I think, with the landscape, with the increase in cost of doing business, it's almost inevitable for M&A to really, to just sit there by yourself and try to compete with people that are raising hundreds of millions of dollars, valuations of billions of dollars. It's going to be really difficult. But again, once you get the right mix of product, brand, and partnerships, you never know what can happen.
Very similar to both Paris's and Giovanni's. And as Alexis mentioned, I was sure that we were going to already see some changes of movement. We knew that over COVID period, cash was the king, and I think that some companies are just delaying what's inevitable for them. At the end of the day, like in any other industry, I think we're gonna see consolidation. We're gonna be seeing a couple of big groups running most of the market, and obviously some of them getting out of it and some new emerging. But generally, do I see capital coming together to bigger chunks? Yes, definitely. That's definitely going to be the future. And what DraftKings and SB Tech have done in the States is just awesome and unreal. And we are yet to see the impact of the entire thing, not only to the US, obviously first to the US, but to the entire industry globally.
I think if I could just add one last point to that, though, and most of the panelists here would have experience of this, Giovanni in particular. But if you go back maybe 15, 20 years ago, I think many people probably would have said the same thing. They would have said, well, Ladbrokes, William Hill, a little bit later, bwin, they're going to take over Europe. They're going to, it's inevitable. They're just going to buy it up and so on. And actually, I think interestingly, what happened was because you had this kind of hodgepodge of regulation and the various local complexities, you've got operators like ourselves, BetFirst, that managed to get a dominant position in the Belgian market. I guess MaxBet is a good example in Serbia, and there's many others right around Europe. I'm thinking of Sticky Man, BetPT, Winamax in France, all local companies that have developed well because they knew their local markets. And so my question is, maybe in the US, you might have that, even though at the moment you see hundreds of millions being raised, but suddenly, a company, a big multi-billion dollar company, they need to focus on a state like Washington. Washington, I don't know, in population terms, the size of a small European country, I'm guessing. And, at some point, if it doesn't happen for them quickly, they're probably going to lose patience with, individual small states. So I think there's still, even though you will see consolidation, I think there's still interesting possibilities for smaller, maybe nimbler operators.
Okay. Maybe just in closing, obviously, as this is a pre-recorded session, we won't be able to have the interactivity of the Q&A, which I think we'd be here for another hour if we did have that, because it's been that informative. Maybe if the panelists would give me the liberty to ask them one question. I think Alexis has touched on it just there when we were talking about, in the UK with Ladbrokes, William Hill. If you had one prediction for the future, maybe 12 months to 2 years, what would you say? You know, your if you had the crystal ball of the future, what will the industry look like in 12 to 24 months? And maybe if I start with Giovanni, and then I'll come round to you. Tell me, Giovanni, what does the industry look like into your crystal ball of statistics in the next 12 to 24 months?
Okay, let me see the crystal ball. Yeah. Okay. So I think that what we will see is a new mixture of the market, because the difference being the company that invested during the lockdown and the company that didn't invest during the lockdown. I am strongly aware, obviously I am one company that invested. I'm strongly aware that this will make the difference, changing a little the market share, okay? And so I think that we will see some companies that were before stronger became weaker, etc., in each jurisdiction. If you mean what could happen in 12, 24 months of really big, we need to come back to the matter of M&A or acquisition, consolidation, etc. And I think that 2-3 of them will happen in Europe, probably within 1 year.
You want to give us a name of who you think will be an M&A? A little tip?
No. Yeah, but I will not. I will not say anything more. Sorry about that.
You know,
but something will happen, because I see very clear sign of the fact that the company that did innovation, study bet between them, because as I said before, our product Trident, so product developed inside the company, is the main source of income now. Okay, and we are a B2B company, so this must have a meaning. But I have seen, I know also other chief executives, a friend of mine, that have had exactly my view, and they are becoming very aggressive, like I am.
Okay. Thank you, Giovanni. Paris, coming to you on the other side of the pond and your crystal ball. What are your tips for the next 12 to 24 months?
I think eventually, you know, all the perceived valuations are going to come to a head, and it's going to be like a real quality product. You know, making real profits are going to become more important. But from the prediction perspective, and kind of linking into the positive perception, I think mainstream companies are going to get more interest in gaming, and there's going to be some massive players that are going to become interested and potentially come out ahead of this from all what we've got currently.
Do you think, for example, we'll see an Amazon or a Google get involved? Well, maybe not a Google, but an Amazon or a big company like that?
Yeah. I mean, you know, they've got the distribution channel. What's that?
Any inside information, or we're hypothesizing here?
Just hypothesizing. It just makes sense.
I'm going to try. Andy McCarron needs to write one snap, but soundbite out of this. So I'm going to push you all as we come to the end. Minyo, if we've got, what's your prediction or vision for the next 12 to 24 months?
I'm hoping, obviously, the first thing that comes into my mind is the stability and the effects we've had over the C period will have to be overcome, and obviously the period ahead of us, the final quarter, people are gonna try to put their finance back in order to produce the best possible balance sheets, so that they are still eligible to get a financing here or there, or to be able to present to the public that they are still credible as partners. On the other hand, again, I will be looking into both region where I'm from to see what sort of movement is gonna be happening. We're gonna have for the first time in the region, we're gonna have a big panel together with local regulators, together with the Maltese regulator, trying to help the local ones understand the entire business. Plus, it's going to be us operators from the region where we're going to try and get to know each other so that we understand the needs and possibilities. And on the other hand, it's going to be still growth of the retail, since it has not been exploited to the full extent. And then there is going to be a steep line, and we're going to have the decline afterwards when we onboard just enough of our users to the online.
And last but by no means least, Alexis, take the stage and bring us to the end with your predictions or vision.
Putting me under pressure here, Simon, but obviously, as I said, I agree with the M&A. I think just to maybe look at another angle, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how retail plays out, because what we've seen with the resumption of sports is our online activities, and I think in most countries, most of the online activities have bounced back really well. And then retail, I think it depends on the environment. And I think in terms of broader retail, this crisis is going to have a lasting impact on the retail environment as people's habits change, and I think inevitably that's going to impact betting and gaming retail. So I think people are going to have to innovate, restructure, think differently. But I think in 2 years' time, the retail environments that we'll have been used to will look very, very different to what they looked like a year ago.
Thank you. And it's a very strong end, and you dealt with the pressure very well, Alexis. So thank you. Allow me to thank all the panelists, the two SBC Hall of Famers, and Giovanni and Paris, and two future SBC Hall of Famers, maybe, and Alexis and Minya. Thank you for your time. And, it's a very informative panel, and I think there's going to be plenty written and said about the panel. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Simon.